Hey guys, this is James with RogueDuelist Trade, and on this channel, we talk about current and upcoming Yu-Gi-Oh product and whether or not you should invest your money in order to profit. If you guys have been following this channel for a while, you know that we cover primarily whether or not to invest in modern Yu-Gi-Oh product. But I do get a lot of questions on investing into the vintage market, which is a very different animal. In this video, I am partnering with a fellow Yu-Gi-Tuber, which is Solemn Yu-Gi-Oh. The core of Solemn's channel is discussing the vintage Yu-Gi-Oh market, and I consider him to be far more of an expert within that market, which is why in this video, him and I are going to discuss the main differences within the vintage and modern Yu-Gi-Oh markets. Solemn Yu-Gi-Oh posts multiple videos every single week on his channel, and by the end of this video, I highly recommend that you go down in the description below, click on the link to his channel, and subscribe and hit the notification bell, and I promise you'll be happy you did. Solemn and I decided on three main topics that him and I are both going to cover, and the three topics we're going to discuss is mindset and preparedness within each market, how liquid they are in terms of demand, and the amount of time that you have to spend if you choose to go in either market. Right now, I'm going to hand it off to Solemn Yu-Gi-Oh and let him introduce himself and discuss mindset within the vintage market.
What's up? I'm honored to be able to share my views with the RogueDuelist fan. My name's Maxime. I'm a music producer, software company owner, and I guess card game nerd. Firstly, I want to say I'm no financial advisor, so if you need professional help with your finances, look for a licensed advisor. But with that out of the way, when it comes to vintage Yu-Gi-Oh investing or collecting, it's important that you don't see it as a quick money-making machine. You're not gonna be quickly flipping and buy and sell and buy and sell and buy and sell. I like to compare it to holding a stock fund long term, or probably a much better analogy would be holding a piece of art long term and looking for that to appreciate over time. Whereas the other side of the coin, which RogueDuelist Trade I would say is a pro at, is gonna be more like stock trading. You're day trading, you're looking for those quick flips. When you look at vintage, you're not looking at the player market. You're more so looking at the collector's market. You generally want to buy the iconic cards in their most original and rare form. Let's say you want to own a Dark Magician Girl. The obvious answer would be a first edition Magician's Force Dark Magician Girl in a PSA 10 or 9. Now, if you were a player who just wants to play Dark Magician Girl in their deck, you could easily get a $2 Dark Magician Girl from 2018. However, that is not what the collectors are generally after. There's a reason that 2018 Dark Magician Girl is about $2, whereas that aforementioned PSA 10 just sold for over 10,000. To quote SM Pratt, a general rule could be the older, the rarer, the minter, the better. Now, the way to see how mint a card is usually getting it graded. So there's companies like PSA and BGS which will give your card a grade, also of course authenticate that it's real, put it into a slab, and that way you know this Blue Eyes, this Dark Magician, this Exodia is actually mint. It's a 9, a 10, and so forth. This is why the vintage market can generally be split up into three categories, I would dare to say. You have your sealed, your boxes, blisters, packs, and so forth, your raw cards, which you can put into a binder, nice to look at, and your graded cards inside your PSA or BGS slabs. To collectors, it's all about those truly rare iconic pieces. They're not looking for the latest staple to build a 5-negate board. The final note I would want to give is that it's probably best if you actually care about these cards. If you're just looking to make a quick buck, there's plenty of ways out there to do that. If you don't actually care for these cards, it will be very hard for you to actually hold on to them in maybe a colder market, and then you are much more likely to actually lose money. Apart from that, if you have some very fond memories of certain cards as a kid, perhaps that can give you an edge because you already know where certain levels of demand could be.
The mindset you have to have within modern Yu-Gi-Oh, you always have to be on top of things with all the latest product and changes that might be coming into the competitive format. And you need to be on top of it months ahead of time. The reason why is because if you want to pre-order product in the TCG, you have to pre-order with distributors between 2 to 3 months before the product actually hits shelves. And that can make it very difficult because there's a lot of TCG exclusive products that we get, such as Gold Series product, tins, Battles of Legend, where we don't know a large majority of the cards that are actually coming in those sets. That does require a lot of prior research and seeing the history of how some of those sets perform in order for you to make an educated decision as to whether or not you may invest in one of those products, again, months ahead of time. Now, for a lot of main sets, we can look somewhat like in a crystal ball into the OCG, which is Japan, because they will get a lot of the main sets first. first. And in the TCG, we usually see a majority of the cards that the OCG gets before they actually come into our format. Now that is extremely helpful for us because if you understand the meta, even at the broadest level, you can make educated guesses as to how competitive this set's going to be, or if there's a lot of fan favorite archetypes or legacy support that's going to be coming later into the TCG.
In vintage cards, there's definitely less liquidity. If you have a Blue Eyes White Dragon first edition SDK in PSA 10, sure, that card did sell for over $10,000, but it's much harder to find a buyer in that category of price, let's say, than for your $5 Ash in common. Higher end items tend to be less liquid because the buyer pool is simply much smaller. This makes it harder to actually cash in your collectibles unless, of course, you go through some kind of vendor who then buys at a better price, and that way he can make his profit afterwards. On the flip side, this also makes it much harder for some of these cards to crash. If tens of thousands of people can all list their $5 Ash on TCG Player or Card Market, it's much easier for them to continuously undercut each other at 1 cent, eventually pushing down the price very rapidly or harshly. Meanwhile, with the aforementioned Blue Eyes, there's under 80 copies in the entire world right now. So it's much harder for people to actually undercut each other on price because they're quite simply almost never available. You'd be extremely lucky to find a single listing for that card right now. Beyond that, because there will often not be a listing, many collectors will actually pay premiums for these cards because they're just lucky that there's finally one for sale. And because there is less liquidity and also less competition with undercutting cards, this also makes it so you don't necessarily have to sell right now. I promise you, if you bought a first edition LOB Blue Eyes White Dragon in PSA 10 in 2017 for $700, and now that card sells for between $20,000 and $40,000, you're probably pretty happy that you didn't sell. You can easily sit on these for months or years and pretty likely have seen some level of appreciation. Now, of course, past returns don't predict future returns. I'm not telling you that you can just buy some card at 700 and then in a few years it'll definitely be 20,000 or 40,000, but it's just a solid example to illustrate my point.
I would definitely say that modern Yu-Gi-Oh product is far more liquid than vintage, largely because we are getting cards coming into our current format in the TCG. So anything that's competitive or legacy support for fan favorite archetypes or new archetypes that are coming in that people are interested in, if the product is coming out, the largest demand is going to be immediate on market launch. So that means if you're buying an opening product, you want to get your product as close to market launch as possible, because as soon as you crack open your cases and boxes and you start putting things up on TCG Player, Card Market, eBay, that's when you're going to get the largest amount of sales and move your inventory quickly. Now, for most product, especially main sets that come into the TCG, there's kind of that 80-20 rule where you want to sell roughly 80% of the foils that you pull inside of the product, but you may want to hold back roughly 20%. And the reason may be that you feel that some of those cards might see more competitive play in future formats, depending on how the competitive format evolves, or other archetypes you know that are coming that might be able to use certain cards, which will create more demand for those cards down the road, meaning that they might see higher price points where you can get higher margins just by holding on to a subset of cards in those sets. But you have to be very careful with that, and the reason why, if something is competitive coming into the TCG, it is likely going to be reprinted. So you usually don't want to hold on to singles or even sealed product of main sets probably longer than 6 to 9 months before reprints can be announced.
In vintage cards, your time allocation will be very different than from modern. There is a lot of research upfront required. There's a lot of details and intricacies that if you don't know these, it will be very easy to actually buy cards for a price and then realizing that actually no one wants that card and now you wasted a lot of money. So you really need to be doing a lot of research up front so you actually know what to buy and what people are willing to pay for something, what cards people actually want and what's actually rare. But once you have done that, it becomes quite hands-off. No new vintage cards are being printed. No vintage meta will change because of the new vintage ban list. The wanted cards are the wanted cards. And sure, sometimes you may see an influx of interest into other cards, or some people get priced out of cards and so interest in others kind of grows, but in general, the wanted cards are relatively established. I don't need to check prices every day and see that there's a new set coming and that will crash this card or that will make this other card go up. I have my PSA Cyberstein nicely slabbed in the bank's vault, and I don't even have to think about it. I can go about my life, produce some music, run my company, and just let it grow.
So for the amount of time spent in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm not going to lie, it can be a bit of a grind. The reason why is if you want to see a significant income within Modern Yu-Gi-Oh, you probably want to be buying at least 5 cases plus. And if you want to be maybe replacing your income altogether, depending on how committed you want to be, you might be buying 20 plus cases in order to do that. With that in mind, you're likely going to be cracking open a ton of packs and having to sort every single one of your cards. And that is definitely something that should not be underestimated. It can take a lot of time. Also within Modern Yu-Gi-Oh, as I mentioned before, your biggest demand and sales are going to be around the time of market launch. Depending on how much product comes out in a given month, you might have like 2 solid weekends in a month where you're gonna have your nose down in envelopes, putting cards in with shipping labels or stamps and getting them out to your customers. But that does mean it can be fairly laid back in terms of sales throughout most of the time in each month. Now, I should mention that you could choose to sell sealed product. That way you're not having to crack open cases and sort all of your cards. Now, margins are usually slimmer in doing that, but if you're able to operate your own website and avoid seller fees on TCG Player, Card Market, and eBay, then it actually can be fairly profitable. And again, if you don't have the time to open everything and sort it, that might be the better route in terms of how much time you spend for modern product.
Getting back to my earlier point, it's probably paramount that you have an actual interest in Yu-Gi-Oh as a game, or its rich history as a franchise at least. There's plenty of ways to make money, and cardboard is a very speculative one at that. If you don't care for these cards, it's very likely that once the market cools off a bit, because yes, we can't have endless bull rushes forever, you are not the kind of person that will be willing to hold on to these items. Beyond that, you're probably also not willing to do the research required to buy the proper cards. So yes, it's very exciting that cards go up and up and up, but there will be a time where we will have a period of stagnation. And if you are the kind of Bitcoin flipper, trader, that kind of person, it is very likely that you won't care enough about the game to actually hold these very long term, which is when most of the wealth is made. The memories of 7-year-old me playing with the 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons and the Relinquished and wanting to be Kaiba or Pegasus someday are so strong that I will be fine if my Blue Eyes does nothing for the coming years. But the Bitcoin flipper, speculator and so forth, he's gonna sell, 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 and not actually see the growth because he simply was impatient. But true love for this game is far more important than anything else we have listed today.
My final thoughts wrapping up this video. Obviously, there are plenty of other business ventures that you can go into and make side business out of and build other streams of revenue. But the reason why I choose Yu-Gi-Oh, it's because it's a hobby that I love. I got back into Modern Yu-Gi-Oh back in early 2019, but I grew up with Yu-Gi-Oh with my older brothers in the early 2000s, always trying to build decks and one-up each other and watch the shows every Saturday morning. And it just brings so much nostalgia that for me, coming into Yu-Gi-Oh as a side business, it doesn't necessarily feel like research or work if I'm putting in time to decide whether or not to invest in product, or if I'm sitting here making videos for you guys to help you in your decisions and what investments you make in modern product. I found in early 2019, before I tried getting into vending, I was already spending so much time researching cards just for the fun of it that I figured I might as well make money doing it. I feel it's more enjoyable and rewarding if you're making extra income with something that you love and are passionate about. And that's why I do what I do, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to do other ventures down the road in terms of trying to build multiple streams of revenue, because that's definitely where my heart is. I have an entrepreneurial spirit, but for now I'm focused on Yu-Gi-Oh and supporting you guys through YouTube, and I absolutely love it. All right, guys, so that's the end of this video. I would love to know what you guys think about this collaboration with Solemn Yu-Gi-Oh. Let me know down in the comments below. Is this something that you guys like to see? Would you like to see more topics covered between me and Solemn Yu-Gi-Oh? Do you guys want to see other collaborations? Again, let me know down in the comments below. And also, I want to give a big shout out to Solemn Yu-Gi-Oh. Thanks, man, for helping and partnering with me in this video. And guys, if you couldn't tell, Maxime is extremely knowledgeable and articulate within the Yu-Gi-Oh vintage market. And if you guys enjoy learning about the vintage market within Yu-Gi-Oh, go down in the description below and make sure you subscribe to his channel and hit the notification bell so that you guys will have access to other great Yu-Gi-Oh investment resources on YouTube. And also, if you haven't already, if you guys enjoy discussions on modern Yu-Gi-Oh Yu-Gi-Oh product. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you guys don't miss a video from me. And also, if you guys enjoyed the content in this video, to help the YouTube algorithm and grow this channel, like this video. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the content. I'll see you in the next video on RogueDuelist Trade.